Hi everyone. Welcome back to this week's edition of Think, Learn, Succeed in the book club. I'm so excited to be doing this again with you. This stuff is so important, so interesting, and I really hope it's helping you. Don't forget, if you've just joined us now for the first time, all these sessions are recorded on YouTube and you'll be able to go back and check them out. Last month we did Perfect You, that incredible book. Go back and go through those YouTube lives and go through those podcasts and get that book if you haven't got it already. This month and next month we're working on Think, Learn, Succeed. So we're working on this book, Think, Learn, Succeed. Don't forget, this book has also got the DVD and the workbook with it. All my books have the workbook and DVD. So the Perfect You that I did last month also has the workbook and DVD. They're great for small groups because the workbook and DVD break this book down into sections that you can do over a series of about between 8 and 9 weeks, or even longer if you want to. And these YouTube live sessions are there to help you just understand a little bit more and dig a little deeper. Don't forget, we also to subscribe to our email list. When you subscribe to our email list, you're going to get more information about this week's particular content. You're going to be linked to you'll get links to the blog. The blog is also related to the book club this week. And then also don't forget to listen to the podcast, because that's also related to whatever chapters we are discussing in the book that week. So you've got the YouTube live, you've got the podcast, and you've got the blog. All that information you'll find on social media. So follow me on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Follow me, as I've already said, subscribe to our email so that you can get all this information as well on email. So much information to help you to be your best you. And if you've just jumped on now, as I said, no panic. You can go back and you can still listen to the podcast and still read the blogs and still see the YouTube lives. And if you haven't managed to read the chapters and you still want to follow along, go back and read the chapters after. Just get into doing this. Just get into the habit of diving in and getting this content under control. It's so important for you. So the title of this book, as you all know, is Think, Learn, Succeed. You need to get your thinking right. You need to look after your mind, because if you don't look after your mind that looks after everything else that you do, then you're going to have a problem in life. So I'm really all about teaching you how to use your mind to improve your mental health. And there's so many aspects to this. And that's why this year is our mental health makeover and our mental health initiative to help you to really dive deep into these topics. So this week we are studying chapters 5, 6, and 7 from this book. And so I'm going to start immediately with chapter 5. Once again, the format will be I'll read certain sections and we'll just talk the sections through, and I'll give you a few little tips and things, and then we'll cover that. It'll take us around about 30 to 45 minutes, somewhere in that region. Okay, so the controlled emotions mindset. Chapter 5 is the controlled emotions mindset. I really love telling you about this information in these books. You know, everything that I write has come from 30 years of clinical experience, 30 years of research. We're doing research currently. I'm starting a whole lot of clinical trials. You can also, if you subscribe to my email list, you'll be able to find out more about that. So I'm telling you stuff that has got so much science behind it, and also has helped so many thousands, hundreds of thousands of people around the world. You know, when we collectively come together and get our mind right and sustain this choice to bring all thoughts into captivity and to really tap into the power of the mind that God has given us, we will change the world. We'll help to make those changes that are significant, and we will lead deep, meaningful lives. That's what it means to really succeed. So we really are going to dive into that in depth this year. So the controlled emotions mindset. Have you ever thrown, I'm going to read from just the first little section. Have you ever thrown a whole lot of clutter into a closet just before guests arrive? I know I've done that before. Only to hear a loud noise as the closet door suddenly opened and everything fell out in full view of your guests. Well, the same thing can happen in your emotional life. We need to learn to understand what emotions are and how to control our emotions. We hear so much talk about emotions being bad for us. I hear so much of this in the churches, and people just talking in general, saying that I mustn't think with my emotions. I must only think with, I don't know what you're supposed to think with, because you're an emotional being. You are designed to think, to feel, and to choose. When you think, you feel. When you think and feel, you choose. Those three go together: thinking, feeling, and choosing. Feelings are good. Feelings help you understand life. They give you the colors of life. They give you the ability to enjoy the beauty of life and to experience the highs and the lows. You're a thinking, feeling being. So we need to embrace our emotions, but we also need to understand how to control toxic emotions and to understand the difference between healthy and toxic emotions. So you can't say all emotions are bad. That's really not a very logical thing to say at all. Emotions are good when they are healthy emotions, and when they're toxic emotions, we need to dig deep and find out why we've got those toxic emotions and deal with them. So, a controlled emotions mindset means that you are regulating, you are become a self regulator. You are regulating how your emotions are functioning and whether they're toxic and what to do about them, and when they're good, how to handle them, and so on. So, they are like clutter. If you just have a whole bunch of toxic emotions and things that you haven't dealt with, what's going to happen is that you're going to stuff them inside, suppress them, and they will explode. Emotions are attached to thoughts. Thoughts with emotions are living and alive and dynamic, and they will erupt volcanic mode if you don't deal with your emotions. So we can't suppress emotions. We need to deal with them. We need to process them. Toxic emotions need to be processed because toxic emotions are attached to toxic thoughts, and toxic thoughts and emotions need processing and reconceptualizing. So and the other thing about this, I say over here in the middle of this page on page 65, and of course, it will happen at the most inopportune time because buried emotions are not controlled and thoughtful emotions. So if you don't control your emotional life, the same thing can happen as when that clutter comes flying out of that closet. Those emotions that are toxic, that are suppressed, are going to come flying out of something in your life. You're going to have a panic attack, a meltdown. You're going to maybe say things you don't mean. You're going to maybe do things that you don't mean to do. You're going to maybe shock yourself in the way that you're functioning. Suddenly, in a moment, you'll do or say something that'll shock you and shock those around you. And that's often in behavior patterns. You can start setting up behavior patterns where you seem to be changing. And that is coming from toxic emotions that are starting to explode inside of yourself. So don't kid yourself. You have to control toxic emotions, okay? The other thing about emotions is that they are completely unique to you. I'm reading from page 65, still middle of the page. They are also completely unique to you because emotions don't happen to you. I love this. I love what I've said here. Emotions don't happen to you. Emotions are made by you. You make your emotions. You're not a pre-programmed machine with pre-programmed emotions. You create your emotions. You have this tremendous creative ability in it. In fact, I say this really great sentence here. You design the tectonic nature of your emotional experience. And what that sentence means, tectonic means like architecture. You design what your emotions look like. You have so much control. We live in a world where a lot of science, the propaganda of science coming through the media in the incorrect way, implies that we don't have control over our emotions. And a lot of messages that are going on in the church world today are saying exactly the same thing, and that all emotions are bad. You have the power to control your emotions. You're brilliant and you're intelligent, okay? So when you express your emotions in a healthy way, you allow the free flow of neuropeptides and energy through your brain. So what that means is that your brain and your body, the physical part of you, respond to how you think and feel and choose. So when you self-regulate your emotions, you are literally self-regulating the chemicals and the neuropeptides and the genetic expression and how all the things that are happening in your cells and your genome. You are controlling that when you are controlling your emotions. You are controlling your physical. That is really exciting to know that. So I'm going to turn over the page. I'm in the middle of page 66. I'm going to read from the third paragraph down. Second paragraph down. Unfortunately, so many of us have become experts at hiding our emotions, or think we have. You think you can hide your emotions, but what you're actually doing is suppressing them for a time. Instead, what actually is happening, you are creating neurochemical chaos in your brains when you suppress a toxic emotion. Signs of suppressed feelings and emotions arising from this conflict that you create include things like irritability, short temper, overreactivity, anxiety, frustration, fear, impulsiveness, a desire for control, perfectionism, self doubt, aggression. all kinds of negative behaviors. When you find that's starting to happen a lot in your life, you could be suppressing some toxic emotions. Next paragraph down, I talk about emotions being very fast. It takes about now this is really interesting. It takes about 100 milliseconds for our non-conscious mind to react emotionally, and about 600 milliseconds for our conscious mind to register that reaction. So, what that means is that your non conscious mind registers an emotion much quicker than the conscious mind. It registers at 500 milliseconds faster than the conscious mind. So, your non conscious mind, which is operating 24/7, which is part of the 99% of who you are, is already registering that emotion. You're already feeling that whatever it is that you're feeling. But your conscious mind, the awareness of this feeling, is only going to register about 500 milliseconds later. So you've got a whole 500 milliseconds where you are actually expressing your emotions, because your non-conscious mind will express itself through your facial expressions and your bodily expressions. And then your conscious mind kind of follows a little after, 500 milliseconds later. So you're already expressing your emotions to the world and the people around you before you're even aware that you're expressing them. And that's why sometimes, I know an example of this is, sometimes I will look at my husband and I'll say, we'll be talking about something and he seems worked up, and I'll say, what's wrong? And he's saying, but nothing's wrong. But I said, there's something in your face. I can see it. But it's because he's actually sent the message to me that something is wrong before he's actually consciously aware that something was wrong in what I said or my reaction or something he's thinking about. So we pick up that in each other very, very quickly. It's kind of like, and I don't know if you've ever done this before, but I have, where you send off a text message, you're drafting a text message and you actually don't want to send it, you want to change it, but you press send before you mean to press send, and then the wrong thing is sent, and that creates another whole lot of problems. That's kind of what we're doing when we have a lot of boxed up and suppressed toxic emotions. If it's healthy emotions, it's fine, but when it's toxic emotions, you're sending out that message of toxicity before you even think and then you think you're controlling it, but people are reading it in you. This is why we need to know people see it before you actually aware that they see it. Okay, so then let's turn over to page 67, top of the page. Emotions are not what we think they are. Now, this is really interesting, okay? We've been told a lot through the media and a lot through what is just spoken about in general about emotions, that emotions are universally expressed and universally recognized. There's been a lot of psychological research where they show people pictures of faces of different cultures, and then they say that emotions are basically universally recognized. But deeper research into this, research that is replicable, because a lot of psychological research hasn't been very accurate. And there's a huge thing going on at the moment about how a lot of the psychological research that we base a lot of our thinking on and our perceptions on is not very accurate. The emotional research is one of them. So the point here is that emotions are not universally expressed and recognized. They are not hardwired brain reactions that are uncontrollable. That is the message that we've been told. They're universal, they're universally recognized, they're hardwired into our brain, and they are uncontrollable. All untrue. They are completely unique. You are not born with any pre-wired emotional circuits. You have the proclivity, and also your natural instinct, your natural proclivity is towards the positive, okay, which is your wired for love concept, your wired for love design, your optimism bias. So what we are actually doing is through our choices, we are wiring in our emotions. So when you bring those thoughts with their emotions into captivity, you can design and wire the emotional response that you want to create. You're in control of that. Okay, so your emotions are the other thing I want to mention is that don't think you can read other people's emotions. The rest of that paragraph talks about that. I'm going to just jump down to the sort of the third last sentence on page 67, the first paragraph. Your brain is just responding. Your brain is not making you have an emotion. These predictions, so when you try and predict other people's emotions, you're going to make a mistake. Don't think that you can predict other people's emotions. Very important to realize you don't predict other people's emotions. You can, but you're going to be, according to the research, there's a 30 to 50, even a 70% chance that you're going to be wrong in predicting what someone else is thinking. So instead of just guessing, because now I'm telling you, if you just guess what someone else is thinking, feeling, you're going to be up to 70% wrong, according to the research in quantum physics and emotions. You therefore need to be very cautious about making decisions or reacting to other people when you think you can read what their emotions are. So you're going to see emotions in a person's face, but you don't, if you just assume, like if I just assumed with Mac in that example that I gave that he's mad about something, maybe he wasn't mad. That was, I would say, would have been 70% wrong to think, why are you angry? Meanwhile, he could have just been thinking deeply about something else. And most of the time, that is the case. So it wasn't that he was angry or frustrated. It was that his mind was preoccupied with something else. And he looked angry, but he wasn't. He was actually just preoccupied with something else. So by me assuming that he was angry, I changed my physical bodily response and my emotions and caused something that wasn't even necessary to cause. So we mustn't assume things. We must remember each person is so unique in how they are expressing what is going on in their mind. And so many arguments and misperceptions between people can be avoided if we learn to control our emotions and get this knowledge. Don't assume you can read other people's emotions. You are going to be up to 70% wrong in your guessing of what the other person is thinking and feeling. So you should rather say, what do you mean? How are you feeling? Or you seem to look upset. Am I right? Am I wrong? Get clarification. Give the person a chance to express how they are feeling. Because as a person expresses and as you express how you're feeling, you are framing that. Okay, so there's a lot of great stuff on emotions in here. And then on page 68, I give you the activation tips. Remember, at the end of every chapter, there's activation tips to help you to get into these different concepts to help you. And I'm going to just read the second one out. The second vital step is to recognize that you're not responsible for the cause of the emotion, but rather for the management of the emotion. I chose to speak about that one because it's very important that we realize that we might be feeling very upset or very frustrated or very anxious or something, some kind of emotion, that you're not responsible for the cause, but you are responsible for the management. So things happen that will make you react. You're going to react. You are a thinking being, feeling being, but so you're not responsible for the cause. You can't control that. It's someone else or some situation, but you are in control of how you manage that emotion and how you reframe and reconceptualize. Okay, let's have a look at chapter 6, the forgiveness mindset. Okay, so remember with these mindsets, these are how you are renewing your mind to, or what you are renewing your mind to. That's what these mindsets are. You are renewing your mind to the correct way of thinking. These mindsets, these 15 mindsets that I'm discussing in this part of Think, Learn, Succeed, are the mindsets that you want to renew your mind to, because these mindsets encompass the power of the correct way of thinking, the power of the perfect you that I spoke about in last month's book. See, all my books are linked and related, and that's why you need all of them to get the full picture of all these concepts of how to manage your mind. So we spoke about the perfect you last month, and in terms of how you have this unique way of thinking that is unique for you, and it is perfect. So when we talk about you're putting these mindsets on, I'm helping you activate your perfect you. And there's 15 mindsets that we're going to be discussing and that are discussed in this book. So I encourage you, if you haven't got your book yet, get your book. And mindsets contain power. When you adopt these mindsets, so when you adopt this controlled thinking mindset, you are activating the power of God in you. You are activating the power of the mindset of success in you. God is all about success and meaningful, deep, meaningful relationships and deep, meaningful success that changes you in the world that you live in. So these mindsets, as you adopt these mindsets, that is what you are activating, the power of a renewed and healthy, wired for love, optimism bias that is naturally inside of you. So you need to put these on like you put your clothes on. You need to wake up in the morning and put on, I am going to have a controlled emotions mindset. I am going to have a forgiveness mindset. Today, someone will say something or do something that you're going to need to forgive. So therefore, you need your forgiveness mindset. Now, we know spiritually why we should forgive, but maybe you didn't know scientifically why you should forgive. And that's what I discuss in this chapter. One of the main reasons why we need to forgive scientifically is because we are connected to each other. Quantum physics shows that we are entangled in each other's lives. And there's this great experiment that they do, a series of experiments where they take particles and then they shoot them apart. And no matter how far apart they are, if one spins this way, the other one will spin that way. There's this invisible connection. Quantum physics talks about this invisible connection that there is between humanity. Now, the minute that you are in a relationship with someone, so whether it is you've just met them for the first time and you've built up starting to build up a relationship, whether it's someone you've known for a long time, whether it's positive or negative connection, positive in terms of a friendship, negative in terms of maybe you've connected with someone and they've hurt you in some way, there's a connection. So you are connected. So no matter how far apart, you are going to be impacted by each other. When someone has hurt you and you are the victim of an abuse or whatever it may be, an unkind word, a bullying, or whatever extent, from large to small, if you haven't connected, you still have that toxic thought wired into your brain, that real structure in your brain with that painful emotion. If you haven't forgive, you thinking about it and it's getting lots of energy and you are still entangled with that person. They spin this way, meaning they think about you, they pour energy into your brain. You think about them, you're growing this and you're keeping connected to the source of your pain. Forgiveness severs that. It disconnects that energy that is keeping that pain alive. So now when it's disconnected, you're now removing that energy from that toxic source and you're now causing that toxic pain to start weakening so that you can reconceptualize. You'll always remember what happened to you. It's part of you and it's part of your shaping of your suffering and of your character. But instead of it owning you, you own that issue. So you forgive no matter how bad. It doesn't mean you're excusing what that person did to you. It means that you are protecting yourself so that you can heal. Because if you keep that toxic energy in your brain, you keep it growing, you keep connected to the source of the pain, you are going to suffer mentally and physically. So disconnection is for your own mental and physical health. And then that kind of seals that area off in your brain. And with your mind, you can start to reconceptualize and redesign your brain. And that's where I recommend you get a hold of my new app coming out really soon called the Switch app, and all my materials and the Switch on Your Brain book or the 21-day detox online program, which are all the programs I have to help you to detox your brain. I really strongly recommend that you get your hands on my Switch app. As I said, it's not out yet, it's coming out super soon, but it's on pre-order at the moment for an excellent price. And in there, it's literally the therapy that I walked my patients through and have refined through years of research to help you to be able to detox your brain. And the elements of all these elements that I'm teaching of forgiveness, etc., and these mindsets I have built in different ways into this app and all the add-ons of the app. Okay, so the forgiveness mindset disconnects you from the source. And I'm going to just jump over to page 71 and quickly read something. Forgiveness is the middle of the page 71. Forgiveness. Okay, I'm over here. Forgiveness is incredibly good for your health. Holding a grudge affects your cardiovascular and nervous system, so your heart and your brain and your nervous system through your spine and through the rest of your body. For example, so in a study by Mayo Clinic, people who focused on a personal grudge had elevated blood pressure and heart rates, as well as increased muscle tension and feelings of being less in control. When you feel out of control, do you know that you're going to feel isolated? You're going to feel disconnected from yourself, which creates a sense of isolation inside of you. Unforgiveness leads to that, and isolation really will destroy your body and yourself and your mental and physical health. Forgiveness helps to break that feeling of isolation that we create around us. So in the study, when the participants were asked to imagine forgiving a person who had hurt them, so imagine, they were imagining themselves forgiving that person. The participants said that they felt more positive and relaxed and had a greater sense of well-being. So other studies have shown that forgiveness has positive effects on our psychological health, which in turn impacts our physical health. Okay, so whatever you've gone through, I don't know what you've gone through, but forgiveness is essential to your mental health. Let's have a look now at, don't forget, at the end, I forgot to remind you, you've got your forgiveness mindset activation tips. These activation tips are how you can learn to activate and train yourself to operate in a forgiveness mindset. Remember your mindsets you literally put on like clothes in the morning. You go through the day making sure that you are doing these mindsets, controlled emotions mindset, forgiveness mindsets. And now we're going to talk about the happiness mindset. Remember there's 15 different mindsets. So the happiness mindset. So that's now on page 73. I'm going to just read from the first paragraph. Scrolling through Instagram, it's easy to believe that happiness means having a lot of money, nice things, status, privilege, and looking beautiful. I added that in here. Yale's most popular class, Yale University, is on happiness. Yet happiness is a much wider and more nuanced concept than our capitalistic society would have us believe. Happiness has more to do with a sense of inner satisfaction and than external consumption. It's an inner satisfaction. It comes from inside of you. Okay? It is the joy you have in leading the meaningful, good life and revolves around your ability to focus on the positive, which is your innate ability. You are designed to focus on the positive. You are designed, you have a proclivity to the positive. You have an optimism bias. It is wired into you. Okay? So, and it revolves around your ability to connect with others and to have meaningful relationships in community. You can't operate alone. You are designed to be connected within community. Happiness is knowing where you belong and knowing why you're alive, regardless of your circumstances. We all know life is tough. Happiness is a sense of peace in the midst of the chaos. It is a sense that I know who I am, I know where I'm going, I know what I want out of life. I'm in these meaningful relationships. Happiness, you cannot be totally happy if you try and isolate yourself. And when the bad things happen around you, you come together in a sense of community. And there's a happiness in the sadness, knowing that you can come together to resolve whatever it is that is going on in your life. There's meaning in that. There's a solution focused, meaningful life living experience. And that's what happiness is. And sometimes happiness will be that ha stuff. But a lot of the time, happiness is a sense of internal peace that you have. Okay, I cannot emphasize, now this is the second paragraph on page 73. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of the link between happiness and community. Berkeley neuroscientist Emiliana Simon Thomas has found that people with the strongest social connections are the happiest. Our bodies respond positively when we become active members in a community. So I'm not telling you to be happy by doing some magic trick. I'm telling you to be happy by bonding with others, developing deep, meaningful relationships, reaching out and loving others, helping others, noticing others in pain and going out there to help them, laughing together, having fun together. That really helps to foster that natural sense of happiness that is in you. For example, in the brain, we have an area called the mesolimbic dopamine system, which responds by lighting up when you give to others in a loving way. So our brain responds to our mind. When we choose to put on the mindset of happiness and activate that power, our brain functions at a much more efficient level. When the mesolimbic system of your brain fires up, you are increasing your intelligence. You are increasing your ability to access wisdom and to make good, deep, meaningful decisions about your life and your interaction with others. We are essentially hardwired to love and serve others, which aligns with our wired for love design. So you can see I'm stressing happiness comes from not purchasing stuff or looking beautiful or whatever. It comes from relationship. It comes from deep, meaningful connectedness. Okay, so another thing about happiness, if you turn over the page on page 74, I talk about how we need to remember that happiness precedes success. Happy, it's not that, okay, one day when I, one day when I get that money, get that house, get that perfect job, get that perfect husband or wife, get that perfect friendship, get that perfect life, look like this one's life on Instagram. When I have that, then I can be happy. In the meantime, I give myself permission to be unhappy. That's wrong. You can't think like that. Happiness does not precede success. Happiness precedes success. You have to be happy. And in your happiness, you find meaningfulness. And in your happy, meaningful state, you have more wisdom. And when you have more wisdom, you're a nicer person to be around. Your whole functioning is energized and activated in a way that you seem to see solutions more effectively. So you become better at school, better at work, better at life, better in your relationships. So don't think that you need to succeed to be happy. You will never be happy with that philosophy. It is happiness precedes success. Okay? Happiness also doesn't mean, now I'm reading third paragraph down on page 74, and happiness also does not mean a smooth and uncomplicated life. Sorry, that life doesn't exist. Okay, and anyone who tries to sell you that, run a mile in the opposite direction. Harvard professor Sean Acor indicates that increasing levels of happiness in the midst of a challenge, as such as searching for a good investment in a down economy, results in success rates rising dramatically. So what that means is that in the midst of a challenge, whether it's economic, whether it's personal, emotional, work-wise, maybe it's just a crisis in what you in your goals and in what you want for your life, your vision, whatever it may be. Challenges are actually will bring out the best in us. I know you've heard that. So challenges are related to happiness. Challenges bring out the best in us. And when you push through a challenge, there's a sense of happiness in that achievement that is, you've all experienced that. That is amazing. And you need to think back to those times when you've experienced that so that you can remember that challenge and remember that process of moving through the challenge and remember the happiness you experienced as you push through the challenge. Now, here's another point that I want to make. Page 74, the last paragraph, I say, the brain works significantly better when you choose to feel happy in the midst of a challenge. Now, there's a good one. You have to choose to feel happy in the midst of a challenge. It's not easy being in the midst of a challenge. And it doesn't mean you've got to be all smiley and happy and ridiculous and bury your head in the sand. And, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the reality of, okay, this is a challenge, but I'm going to choose to maintain that inner happiness and peace. And it doesn't mean I have to smile and laugh and whatever, but there's a sense of peace and happiness in me because I know when I'm like that, I'm activating my natural, wired for love, perfect you, what we discussed last week. And when I'm in that state, I can access the wisdom that I need, God's wisdom, which is in me and all around me in potential form. I can access that and I can put that into action in that challenge. But by getting out of happiness, by getting all unhappy and sad, I block access to that wisdom. And it's going to be so much harder to get through that challenge and to see the solutions and all the potentials and all the probabilities in that situation. Okay, so down the bottom, I want to read a sentence that on the bottom of page 74, that when you push through, this leads to a sense of achievement as we rise to the challenge, contributing to our happiness. I always personally ask myself this question. Do I want to give energy to the toxic situation by getting all worked up and not letting go? Or do I want to move all my mental energy onto a positive outcome that keeps my happiness meter up? That's a question I ask myself. That's a question you should write out somewhere and have it accessible. Put it in your phone, put it somewhere that you can remind yourself. When you're feeling the challenges of life draining your peace and happiness, ask yourself that question. Where do you want to put your energy? Do you want to go down that toxic, unhappy pathway, or do you want to put your energy into happiness, knowing that your brain is going to be activated and your genetic switches will be activated to help you access the potential that exists in God's wisdom? It's all around you. It's in you, immersed in the wisdom of God. You need to access that. And so we are not merely, on page 75, I'm going to end with just a couple more things. We are not merely happy or unhappy. Our happiness does not depend on our circumstances. I'm reading from page 75, second paragraph. We are not merely happy or unhappy. Our happiness does not depend on our circumstances. Okay? Our happiness does not depend on our circumstances. It's something from inside of you. So that is, and that's where I really want to stress there, is it's not dependent on our circumstances. It's dependent on you knowing what I've told you, that you have this inner resilience, that you have a choice to make about how you're going to operate in that circumstance. And then some people say that, well, in the third paragraph down, I say here, happiness may seem to come easier to some people, but happiness is possible for all of us. It's not that happiness comes easier to some people. It's that you've chosen. It's how you choose by choosing constantly to train yourself to see a challenge as something that's good and to access that ability and that peace within you, then you are choosing to develop a happiness mindset. And that's practice. It's going to take 63 days to make that a habit in your life. So you can become an expert at being unhappy or an expert at being happy. You can be an expert at activating the happiness mindset by practicing or not. So you can read the rest of the chapter yourself. You can go over to the activation tips. Once again, I have some great activation tips there. I'm going to read activation tip number 1. Choose to be happy, pushing through a challenge and enjoying the process of developing your understanding and your abilities. Enjoy the process. If you fail, pick yourself up even if you don't feel like it. Despite how you initially feel, choosing to be happy will become the energy source that keeps you going. Choosing to be happy changes how your brain functions, changes how your body functions, increases your brain power, increases your intelligence and your access to wisdom. The way you should use these activation tips and the way you should use these chapters is that you need to read them multiple times. There's so much information that you're going to miss by just reading this stuff once. No information is going to stay in your head if you just read it once or just listen to me once. And that is why we're taking the whole year to explore these subjects through each book. And then we're going to take different ways of doing this. But by the end of this year, you're going to be so much more equipped. But in the meantime, you should read through these chapters multiple times. Practice these activation tips. Maybe decide, okay, for the rest of this week, I'm just going to take this chapter and I'm just going to work on those activation tips. You decide what works for you. You may be working through this book club with us and be covering lots of information, but you may decide that you're going to go through this for this year, and then next year you're going to just take one thing at a time and work through it slowly. Or you may decide you've read the chapters, you listen to this YouTube live, you listen to the podcast, then you go back and reread these chapters, make notes, write things down, study this stuff, make this part of you. Take 1 or 2 things a day and practice using them. Don't just read this stuff once, because then it's nice to know and it's not going to change you. Remember, you have phenomenal power in your mind. You need to think and learn to succeed. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you again next week. Next week, the chapters that we are covering are chapters 7, 8, and 9. So they're not long chapters. So try and read through those chapters before next week. And don't forget to follow me subscribe to my email list. Encourage people to follow, share this information with other people, encourage them to get into a group with you. Maybe don't do this alone. Get a whole group together. Buy a whole lot of books as a gift for people. Get people into this challenge with you. Work together in community. Listen to the podcast, read the blog. Honestly, it's quick. It's better than spending time on Facebook and Instagram. The average person spending 8 hours a day on that. All the stuff that I'm telling you to do to listen to the podcast, to listen to the YouTube, to read these chapters. This is maybe 4 or 5 hours of your week, and you are spending on average 8 hours a day on social media. So cut back on social media, transfer that time into studying these materials, and let's get our mental health under control. Thanks for joining me. This is Dr. Caroline Lee. See you all next week.